everyone, and welcome to the Gorgeous Growth Podcast, where we discuss strategies to take your brand to the top. I'm your host, Oscar Guerrero, and today I'm joined by Nevena Tomic. Nevena has worked in the fashion and beauty. Nevena has worked in the fashion and beauty space for over 10 years at corporate companies such as Walgreens, Sears, and Claire's. She was a buyer for some of the largest cosmetic brands, including L'Oreal, Maybelline, Revlon, Neutrogena, CoverGirl, Almay, and many more. She is also the founder and CEO of Beaute Fatale, which sold 1.3 million units the first 2 years. And now she's also been the official sponsor of New York Fashion Week, and her brand has been featured in Vogue, Harper Bazaar, US Weekly, Elle, Vanity Fair, Essence, and many, many more. She's a corporate leader, celebrity makeup artist, and also recently crowned Mrs. Serbia. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I
So
love that.
welcome to the show. I'm really, really, really excited to have you on the podcast. You know, you've obviously have a ton of experience. You've been in the industry, you've been in the trenches, and I'm sure that there's going to be a ton that you have to share with us. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. No, I'm super excited. I've been kind of watching what you're doing, and I love the title of your podcast. Number one, Gorgeous Growth is awesome. And I'm excited to talk about those hot topics relative to the beauty industry and really just share some knowledge to really bring the beauty market to a higher level. And I'm excited to be here. So thanks for the opportunity.
All right, awesome. So why don't we start off talking about that, right? Let's talk a little bit about beauty, and the perception that people have of beauty, and maybe what you're doing to mold that, change that, and help the world.
Yeah, well, I think we're in a world of social media filters. So we've really established this framework of negative connotations around beauty. You know, women and men feel the need to meet specific standards when it comes to the way they look, the way they act, the way they're posting on social media. And what that's leading to is really these statistics and facts around mental health, suicide rates, and just a lot of kind of negative connotations around the beauty industry. So, you know, I think that that's the perception. That's where we're currently at. And beauty is really at the forefront of the world. So in the last few years, you've seen market share increase significantly of beauty. If you look at retailers, they're investing heavily in gaining space in their beauty departments and taking from other categories that are low performers, and they're giving it to specialty beauty. And that's really a testament to what's going on in the world. And I think that just as we continue to see that market research is pointing fingers at kind of the growth that we're expected to see in the beauty industry, we're going to continue to see these negative connotations around what the definition of beauty is. And that's really where my brand comes in.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your brand and how that was founded?
Yeah, so I started a company named Beaute Fatale Cosmetics, translates to the fatal beauty. And really, it's all about educating women, men about the harmful chemicals that are in makeup. So a lot of people don't know that on the shelf, when you go to a beauty store or just a mass or club retailer, that the products on the shelves are typically pumped with a lot of preservatives that are harmful and have a lot of chemicals. So if you think about a lipstick that's being sold for $5.99 on the shelf, typically it'll have glue, plastic, alcohol. Typically it's tested on animals, formaldehyde, which is used during the embalming process when someone passes away. There's really no set guidelines from the FDA in terms of like brands making sure that their products are safe. And what inevitably a brand can come up with any product with any ingredients and can bring it to market in the US. And what that's caused is this overcrowding of brands in the beauty market and in the industry. So, you know, my brand carved out a white space many years ago, and we were super successful in getting partnerships with different companies, tapped on the shoulder by different retailers. But my brand is all about the education piece of making sure you understand what's in your product and that a lot of brands are skipping out on their quality of ingredients to make a higher profit margin at shelf. So, my brand operates at a higher price point because we actually extract from plants and seeds to create colors, which is different than other brands that lean into synthetic colorants that are really harmful for your skin. And we, really are focusing on natural ingredients, no animal testing. We're EU compliant, halal certified, dermatologist approved, non-comedogenic, meaning will not clog your pores. And yeah, we're really just trying to get out there as one of the first clean brands that's kind of carving out a new path.
Oh, really nice. So let me ask you this then. How did you get your message out there when you first started? I talked to a lot of brand owners that started off, a lot of them were cosmetologists, they were stylists, they were makeup artists, and they found some type of gap in the industry, right? Or in the products. And then they started to formulate their products. Many of them get frustrated, however. There's a big thing like right now with TikTok that's going on where there's a frustration where people who have like scientifically backed facts and they're going up against influencers. So there's this dichotomy that's happening, and the influencers are giving information that's not true, and it's frustrating because they are influencers, people are listening. So just curious how you actually got your message out there.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think that for my brand, one of the things that was most important was making sure that I was the face of the brand and providing the right knowledge. So I didn't really ever invest in like influencer strategies or social media strategies off the bat. I wanted to make sure that my message was clear, it was concise, and it would not be manipulated once I passed it to, let's say, an influencer. So I protected that boundary by making sure that if there was an opportunity to present my brand, it was coming directly from our mission statement and not from the mouth of an influencer. So we didn't really ever send product to influencers or partner with influencers or any of that, to your point. Not necessarily because of the things you had mentioned. To be honest with you, I didn't have the funding to do that. I mean, influencers were very expensive, and they wanted 20, 30, 40, $50,000 for a few posts, and for me, ROI wise, I just didn't think that it would tie back to sales. I thought maybe we'll get followers, but I didn't really think it would tie back. So for me, strategically, the best way I went about getting my product out there was partnering with a beauty box company who had over 3 million subscribers. And so what we did was I did a co-op partnership with them and got my product into millions of hands of beauty lovers. And they were not official influencers, but because we knew that they were already the right demographic who was shopping those categories that my brand plays in, we knew that would be the route to go. And so that was really how I got the brand out there. I think the second strategy was New York Fashion Week. So by partnering with these high-end fashion designers, we were already allowing the brand to become a part of the press, and that was all earned media. So let's say Badgley Mischka, we were the official makeup sponsor for Badgley Mischka's runway show at New York Fashion Week, and there was over 150 editors, buyers that were at that show. And so by us being the official makeup sponsor, we got automatic placement in the magazines and articles written about the brand, and our makeup technique was showcased in the magazine articles as like a top beauty look that you should have. And so for us, those were the two strategies versus going the route of influencers. And then, influencers came with some of those partnerships as like freebies, but we never really invested in it. Whereas I know of other brands that was their claim to fame. I mean, if you look at NYX, I remember reading an article where the CEO specifically said, one day we saw an extreme spike in sales of a particular item, and we didn't know where it was coming from. And later on, they found out that it was an influencer who had purchased the product and had posted about it. And so from there, because they saw that high spike, they decided to invest heavily in social media influencers, and that was their main strategy. And that is how NYX grew significantly. But at this point, that's not something that we've played in.
Okay, I understand now. You mentioned something key there, and that's that in the beginning, for many brands, funds are tight. So the strategy that you use is going to be super important. Did you bootstrap this?
So for the way that I worked it was I funded everything on my own. I was working a corporate job, and I was taking all my money from my corporate jobs and putting it into the business. And then whenever I had a purchase order, I would pull out funding to cover the PO. But I mean, that wasn't considered like a business loan. And then it came to a point where the purchase order profit was getting so high that I can fund, the future POs myself. And so that's, I guess the right way to put it was just using resources that were strategic versus going out and just pulling a business loan and backing it personally. So
Yeah, or raising capital and having to give away equity and stuff like that.
correct. I mean, if you look at Shark Tank, a lot of the entrepreneurs on Shark Tank will do they'll do like crowdfunding, and typically a brand that a Shark Tank investor will proceed with will have to do some type of crowdfunding. That's really what they look for, from friends, families, and kind of campaign development. So that is another strategy that entrepreneurs can tap into.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it sounds to me like it's not overnight fame. It was incremental growth, very strategic and well thought out. Also different because a few years ago, I know a lot of brands out there were really focused on doing mostly online, right? They were mostly direct to consumer, mostly online. You took more of a co-marketing role, right? With the box and whatnot, and that really helped. And also in your sponsorship, you were able to get eyes on you. So it's about like getting your product in the right hands and getting the right eyes on you, I would say. Does that kind of sum that up?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good way to recap it. And I think that's very different than how other brands typically want to go into retail. So
Good.
a lot of other brands, like their goal is to get into Ulta, get into Sephora, and they harp on that in the first couple of years. And then once they get in to a retailer like that, whether it be on a counter display or on a side panel, on an end stand, or in line in their planogram, they begin to realize that those retailers can sometimes force you to do really aggressive promo strategies, 20% off, BOGO 50s, and typically the brand funds the depth of the discount. So if a customer is getting 20% off, I mean, typically the brand is getting a bill back for that depth of the discount off of their invoice. So your profit margin goes down, and you're actually giving away inventory for a lower amount than you had originally anticipated when you signed up with a retailer. So yeah, our strategy was very different than what I see other brands. A lot of other brands will reach out to us and say, like, are you in Ulta? Are you in Sephora? And my answer is always, that's not part of our strategy right now. That's not something that we're interested in. I think same thing with Amazon. If you look at, we get tapped on the shoulder by Amazon a lot. And a lot of people will say, well, why aren't you selling on Amazon? Well, I think it boils down to whether or not you want to give away a piece of your profit. And you're talking a pretty good piece. And, you kind of need to understand whether or not you're forecasted high enough to net out the impact of giving away, a piece of each product that's being sold. So I think it just depends on the brand and how fast their product moves.
Yeah, but what you're telling me is super important because I find that a successful brand, a successful founder should look at unit economics. They should understand these, these strategies. Like, if I do this, how will this affect that, right? And far too often we see brands that are more focused just on, whether the founder's very passionate about the product itself and has absolutely no passion on the finances, and that creates a big problem. And just like getting out there at any cost. So I think that, those are certain things. And the other side of it too is that you're not the first brand that I've spoken to who's actually told me that at the current moment, their playbook is, or their strategy is, not to get on the store shelf at Sephora or Ulta, because that's a whole other challenge, right? Because then you have to fulfill, like, your supply chain has to be perfect, and you have to be ready to fund all of that. So,
Yeah.
being realistic about that is I think is super, super important.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if you look at the long-term plan, a lot of brands think to themselves, well, I'm going to sell it at some point. And so what's going to be most appealing to an investor is the growth that they would capitalize on in the event that you go into retail. So while it could be a good strategy to go into retail and have some momentum to show an investor, like, hey, we're in one retailer and here's how many units we're selling per store per week, and here's how well we're doing, the investor is also going to want to have something to reach for when they buy the company. So by making sure that you have all these other things that your brand can achieve under the guidance of an investor, or once it gets purchased, that is going to be more enticing, in my opinion. So a lot of investors who I've spoken to have said, please do not go into retail until you bring someone in and who will be a part of that process. And I think that that's the smartest way to go.
So when someone wants to purchase your products and try them, what would be the best way to get their hands on them?
Yeah, so right now it's direct, we're direct to consumer online only. I also do a lot of manual orders. So in the event that someone has like a specific skin type or skin color, or they have a different shade that they want to go after, we do custom formulations as well. But additionally, like I said, in the past, we did do beauty boxes, and they are continuing to send our product out with their beauty boxes, and that's through Ipsy. So in the event that someone's signed up with them, but yeah, the best way would be on our website directly.
Yeah, you are the second person who has told me about Ipsy, and they like it. They like it. They recommend it. So for those of you out there who have your brand and have never tried it, you should definitely look that up. And what about sponsorships? Like you mentioned, like you guys were able to sponsor the New York Fashion Week. How does one go about getting a position like that?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, our if you look at the way we market the brand, my brand kind of definitely operates off of the colors that you typically see on the runway. So each season there's top Pantone colors that get launched, and I make sure our innovation is aligned with those colors, and those are the colors that the designers will build their collection off of. And so that was a good collaboration off the bat. But furthermore, because we are all about educating women and men, a lot of the designers like that, and they're really building collections that are more sustainable and better for the environment. And they're also finding ways to give back to the community and to the world. So our mission statement is very aligned with how designers are crafting their collection and approaching their mass market customer. So yeah, I mean, I think in the beginning I knew I wanted to go after New York Fashion Week, because if you look at L'Oreal and Maybelline, they were always backstage at Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. And who's backstage at Mercedes-Benz New York Fashion Week? Makeup artists, hairstylists, and all the major brands, all the press, and the designers. So I thought to myself, that happens twice a year. And if I could be there and kind of like take over from like L'Oreal and Maybelline, because they're kind of stepping away from some of those sponsorships, if I could come in and kind of take that place and mingle with everyone who I know is going to be interested in our brand, makeup artists, hairstylists, the brands, the press, the designers, the models, the stylists. I mean, everyone is there. Celebrities. I knew that just off of one show, we would get in front of a mass audience. And that's a big piece of New York Fashion Week. And the way we went about it was just really kind of building strong relationships with individuals in the fashion industry and crafting sponsorship programs that are incentivizing to them to choose us over other brands.
Okay. So a lot of creativity, a lot of relationship building, but really an excellent strategy.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
really, really.
I think I remember one of the designers said to us, "Can I do a custom color lipstick? I want silver." And we didn't have silver, and then not a lot of brands out there have silver. So like we partnered to build a custom color in time for New York Fashion Week, and we named it a New York Fashion Week exclusive for the designer. And they like that because that makes them feel special. And when we talk to press, the magazine editors or whoever it may be that we're talking to, we can put that plug in, and that way beauty lovers and beauty buyers are like, oh, I want that Badgley Mishka silver lipstick that was on the runway, and so it kind of gives them a reason to go look for our brand.
Oh, nice. So it sounds to me like this was a very different approach to direct to consumer brands. Did you do any paid ads online, anything on Facebook, Instagram, anything like that, or has it been?
In the beginning we tested it. Yeah, in the beginning we tested it out and kind of put some funding around it just to see what kind of movement we would get. Again, I think that's a part of a larger digital strategy, right? So when we're ready, there will be a full, strategy that's going to be built. And at that point, we would bring someone in to help us execute that. I mean, my brand is more about staying in the lane where we know how to execute. But when we're talking digital, that's for the subject matter experts. And we would bring in an agency, we would bring in a digital strategist to carve out all of the different ways that we want to grow the different social channels and put, like you said, paid ads and do some boosting and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, to your point, we tested it on our own, but I think that if you're at that point where we're really ready to lean into digital, that's going to take on a external partnership for us to bring in a vendor who can really lead that strategy. And then from there, we would bring it in house. In the next, like, let's say 5-10 years, we would bring it in house and hopefully be able to run it on our own.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's this hybrid approach. Sounds to me like you were ahead of everyone else, and that certainly has helped you in the sense that today, so many brands that started out 2018, 2019, they saw success in the paid ads. They didn't build any relationships. They didn't get on store shelves. And then, of course, this is an ever-changing industry, right? And in technology, marketing, all that's always changing. So what they did see, obviously a big boom in 2020 because of COVID, and then issues between Apple privacy and Facebook caused everything to kind of crash. And then a lot of businesses got caught out there and just went out of business
Yeah.
because they weren't focusing on building a relationship, neither with wholesalers or with their consumers. So they just got caught out there. And now those who have been able to survive that, the advice that they're getting is, you have to go multi-channel. You need to get out there. You need to get your products on store shelves. And of course, now they're just starting that journey, whereas you've been there. So kudos to you for being forward thinking, and really, it sounds like you really just like leveraged your strengths, you know, uh, and
Yeah.
and that certainly had to have been helpful. Now, is there anything I saw that you guys had some really great or have had really great momentum, especially in the first 3 years. So, is there anything outside of what we have discussed here that you would add, or would you say like this has been basically the go-to strategy?
Yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, that was the go to strategy. But I think what was very helpful was before I started the company, I was a buyer and I was able to learn about how all the brands are pitching a buyer and how are brands developing their business. And so, I think one of while it may not be a strategy, it was my background experience in the corporate environment while working in beauty and fashion, where I was able to learn what other brands are doing. And I had insider information. And so when it came time to me, for me to start my own brand, I kind of had these nuggets of information that not a lot of other beauty entrepreneurs had. And, you know, because I was backstage for these major corporations meeting with brands every week, and these are JBP partners, these are joint business partners who are generating a lot of money for retailer P&L statements. And I was able to see, like, how did they build a marketing calendar? How are they generating their promo campaigns? How are they leaning into free gifts? How are they leaning into social media influencer strategies? And so, because I was meeting with them every week on the corporate side, I felt more comfortable starting my own company. So, my advice is that as someone thinks about building a business, you really have to work in the industry that you want to run a business in, because I'm telling you, if you can have some type of full-time job in the industry, you're going to learn the ins and outs, and it's only going to make you a better entrepreneur. So while it may not be a strategy, it was something that was very effective and very helpful to help me skip over a lot of mistakes that I think I would have made if I didn't work in those jobs years ago when I was younger.
Makes sense. Yeah, a ton of sense. Are there any tips that you could give us? Like, you've been on the buyer side and you've also been on the side where you're selling. So maybe just one tip on something that you frequently see people make mistakes and you were able to avoid that mistake.
Well, I think a lot of brands, what they do is they pay attention to what's currently going on in the US and they try to jump on early trends. And so I think that's a mistake. From my perspective, when we think about innovation, the best thing to do is to pay attention to what's going on in other countries globally and focus on market research, invest in reading about what's coming down the pipeline, and keep a really good pulse on 3 to 5 years out. So if you, as an entrepreneur, if you already can answer the question of what's coming down the pipeline in the next 3 to 5 years when it comes to market research and products and trends and categories, you will be ahead of the game. But if you're an entrepreneur that's just keeping an eye on what's going on in the US, trend-wise, you're behind. You're already too late, because the other brands, they're already working on their 3 to 5 year plans, and they've already got really strategic innovation coming down the pipeline that you, not only do you want to know about it, but you want to differentiate yourself from it. So for example, like, let's say essential oils is hot right now. You know, cool, you can build a product with essential oils in it or some type of, you know, collab. But what's more important is understanding, like, what's the new essential oil, like what's coming down the pipeline that no one has ever heard of or has ever seen. And if you can be ahead of our current times and stay on top of global trends, you know, China, Italy, and just really kind of leaning into those different countries, I think it'll be more effective for an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of people don't think about that. So keep an eye on market research.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that. Thank you for that. And I think that that's going to be super helpful. So let me ask you this. Something a lot of people don't like to talk about. We all make mistakes. You came in here with experience, but somewhere along the line, something had to have happened where you said, well, maybe I would have done this a little differently. What kind of hardship or mistake did you commit that you would have done differently?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things. So in the beginning, I invested in college volunteers. So, like, I was more about giving volunteers and interns from local colleges the opportunity to learn about building a brand. So it was like a partnership between what I was looking to achieve and what they were going to get to be able to put it on their resume. I think in hindsight, it would have been better to do a hybrid of actual paid employees who were fully dedicated. Like, for example, I think for me, bringing in like an in-house publicist would have been really effective, so that they could get the brand out there. And then having, like, you know, just like actual full-time employees, which I didn't do that in the beginning. That I kind of did everything like myself. And I think entrepreneurs make that mistake commonly too, because we don't want to give up the tasks. We think we can do it better, but that's not true. Typically, if you if you are finding people in there who are subject matter experts in their position, it's better to bring them in and let them hit the ground running. So that's kind of one mistake. And the second piece that I've heard other investors tell me when I speak to them is that they think that a digital strategy would have been really effective in the beginning. And so I hear a lot of people say to me, like, well, why aren't you running ads, or why aren't you utilizing social media better with, posts, and really just like leaning into digital? And so I think in hindsight, I would have been better at having at least a more robust digital strategy in the beginning, and maybe pulling some funding to like get behind that. Cause I think that could be a lost opportunity for entrepreneurs.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, I think that you've given us a ton to think about. Yeah, this is really is a lot of knowledge that you're sharing. Where would somebody go to find more of your products and find out what else is happening with you?
Yeah, so our website is www.labeautefatale.com. So labeautefatale.com. And then of course we're on Instagram and Facebook and all those good places. But I think, yeah, keep an eye on us for New York Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week and all the fun things coming down the pipeline.
Sounds awesome. Thanks so much. It was great meeting you. Thank you.
You too. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.